So I wanted to give something on the parsha loosely. The theme that we're going to do over here weekly will be loosely related to the parsha, and Indian loosely related to the parsha. So this week I thought we'll talk on the Indian of Bizer Mitzvahs. Now I just want to lay some groundwork on the sugya of Bizer Mitzvahs, and then we'll bat and take the scenic route about I think an interesting shaila that tells a chayes with like Bizer Mitzvahs nafkaminas. So I just want to let's just close the loop over here. The pasuk says in this week's parsha, "V'shafach v'kisa." When a person does shchita, so then he spills the blood. V'kisa, he should cover the blood. And the Gemara in Chulin, the Gemara darshans as follows. The Gemara says, "V'shafach v'kisa, misha shafach yichasa." As I said in the Gemara. And then the Gemara brings another day. B'masha shafach ba yichasa. With what he did the shvicha, meaning his hand, how he did the shchita, is how he should do the kisei. Shalei chasanu b'regel. You shouldn't cover it with your foot, even though it's blood. It's messy. It's a little disgusting. Shalei chasanu b'regel says the Gemara. Shalei mitzvahs bezuyis alav. We don't want mitzvahs to be bezuyis alav. Meaning do mitzvahs in a bakav dikaifen with your hand. B'masha shafach yichasa. Don't do it in a bezayin dikaifen. Now the Gemara in Shabbos. It's a bakant the Gemara. The Gemara in Shabbos chafez mit aleph. The Gemara brings as follows. I'm going to read them Ravasi. Also lahartzes moyes connected ner Chanukah. You're not allowed to count money, check the money in front of ner Chanukah. The Gemara has a whole arichas over here of different examples, and the Gemara ends up saying half an hour down. The Gemara says, "Amar Rav Yosef, avuin the kula and dam." The makara, the shirish of all of these bizay mitzvahs things that reference. The Gemara references Noi Sukkah. The Gemara references ner Chanukah, which is some mitzvahs derabanan, some mitzvahs deraisa. Different zachan. The Gemara references. The Gemara says avuin the kula and dam. The makara for everything, the source that there's such a thing called bizay mitzvahs is from dam. Now, it's interesting is that Tosfos in Shabbos Daf Chav Beis and in Sukkah Daf Tes, and it could be a third place, and other Rishonim the Ran elsewhere also asks this kasha, is that the Gemara in Sukkah makes a tushtel from Atzei Sukkah to Noi Sukkah. And Tosfos says, how can you make such a tushtel? One's the Raisa, the one is from the Pasuk, and one's the Rabbana. So Tosfos is being magdir that Bizay Mitzvahs, the Indian of not using the tashmish of a mitzvah for anything else, or something like that, is the Rabbanan dikatig. Now, Rav Rishonim that talk about Bizay Mitzvah refer to it like it's a derabbanan. That the Indian of Bizay Mitzvah is a derabbanan. Even though the Gemara is bringing you drasha, the Gemara Chul is bringing you drafa, b'shafach v'chisa, which sounds like it's the rice. Rav Rishonim say it's derabbanan. Ma'aseh and the Achronim, Shagas Aryeh, Pnei Yeshua, others, they seem to say it's a deraisa, which is it's a shtickle milsa d'tmiyah because the Rishonim seem to, out of hand call it a derabbanan. The Achronim seem to be calling it a deraisa, but that's not the nakuda that I want to discuss. So putting that aside, now I just want to read you a Chayadam as a haktama, and then I want to talk a little historical hack that I think has to do with this Indian. So the Chayadam actually has a very nice. It's kedai to go through if you didn't see it. In Chayadam in Klal Samaches, it's the siman is called Hilchos Zehiris HaMitzvahs. There's no siman in Shulchan Aruch with that title, as far as I know. I could be wrong. I think right. I think there's no siman in Shulchan Aruch with that title. Certainly siman Samaches is not that siman. But the Chayyadim compiles all the different like Zehiris mitzvahs. Now in Ice Beis he brings as follows. He says Shaloi Teheh mitzvahs bezuyis alav. Mitzvah shouldn't be buzzing to you. He says V'yesh was a gimel t'naim. There are 3 t'naim in this. Aleph he says Shalei asena b'kalas roish u'b'derech buzzing. How you do a mitzvah? Don't do a mitzvah with kalas roish b'derech buzzing. Do it with a seriousness, with a certain chaymer. Yalfinim midachsev v'shafach estam v'kisei ba'afar v'kiblu chazal. The Ratzalem b'masha shafach yichasa. Then kashem sheshachat b'yad kach yichasa b'yad v'lei dafka b'yad ela yidei kli. He says the Gemara doesn't mean dafka you have to use your hand. It's not like a din with like your right hand dafka you have to use your hand. Do it in about kavadika and don't kick it like it's some sort of zilzal and just walk away from it. As like the Chayyadim. Now Bezi says don't be focused on being mechabed yourself more than the mitzvahs. Like gufa the mitzvahs, your hands are going to get dirty, your clothing are going to get dirty. You wear gloves. That's Bezi. Don't be mishtamish, have hanafim, and that's like lulav and sukkah, noi sukkah, ner Chanukah. That's the third category of shalei mitzvah zuyis alav. And so the Chayyadim is passing like this, the halacha. He's bringing it in his halacha sefer. These dinim of mitzvah zuyis. Now, before I move on to the tidbit I want to discuss, there's rather a beautiful lashon in the Rambam that I want to read when the Rambam brings this. The Rambam in Hilchos Shchita, in the end of Hilchos Shchita, he says as follows: Misha shachat hu yichasa. That's the first day in the Gemara. The one who shachts, he should be mechasa. If someone else observed it and it wasn't mechasa, so there's a din, they should be mechasa also. Then he says as follows: when he's doing the kisoi, lo yechasa b'ragli, don't do it with your leg. Ela b'yadei, oy b'sakin, oy b'keli. So here's where the Chayyadim is coming from. He says do it b'yadei with a sakin or a keli. Do it in a proper way. Kadesh la yinig by minig bezayin. The mitzvahs bezuyis. So you shouldn't be noig and minig. It shouldn't be buzzing to you. Then he says, this is the lines that are amazing. The Rambam says, she'ena kavod la'atzman shal mitzvahs. This that we're mechabed mitzvahs is not l'chveidin shal mitzvahs. El l'misha tziva behen baruch hu. For HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave the mitzvahs. V'tzilanu milamashmesh b'chayshech. And saved us by giving us a Torah and giving us mitzvahs. Hashem saved us from being like blind people just stumbling around in the dark. He lit a candle for us to follow, to have the derech. It's a beautiful Rambam. The Rambam like adds a whole musar shmuz to the idea of bizer mitzvahs, meaning the Rambam understands bizer mitzvahs as like, if you don't take mitzvahs, treat them with the proper seriousness, you lose the value almost of the mitzvahs. The mitzvahs are liyasher, to teach us how to live, to miyasher our drachim, and if you don't take them seriously and treat them with the respect that's due them and do them properly, you lose the whole tachlis of the thing. Now, I wanted to talk about a shtickle far out shaila that maybe would not at face value appear to have to do with the sugya, and some of the big personalities involved in it, and hopefully we'll wind our way back to the sugya. So as follows: one of the biggest, I could say, biggest heads of the 19th century, l'chayra, was the Tzvi Harshchayes, the Maratzchias. Everyone's seen a Maratzchias in life. They're always these great tushtels. It's a great find, very insightful ha'ara, meaning they're in the back of the Gemara, so everyone knows them. Maratzchias also wrote many svarim on different topics. He has many chuvas. He has many things he wrote. He wrote Mavil to Tanakh. He was a very, very bright mensch. He knew a lot. He was very bright. He was a Galiciana Rav. He was a Rav in Zalkova, which is a Galiciana town. And he was one of these people that, for lack of a better way, nobody liked, because he wasn't enough of a maskil for the maskilim, and he wasn't enough of a chassid for the chassidim. So he took fire from both sides. The Malbim is like this. There's like a certain group of chachamim who lived in that era particularly, who took fire from everybody. Meaning they were no. From the maskilim and the chassidim. He took fire from the chassidim and the maskilim. Now he was a big guy. He was a very big guy. Now there's a big shmooze. What was his relationship with the Chasam Sofer? Now in Chuvas Chasam Sofer, in Shulchan Chasam Sofer, there are 6 chuvas that the Chasam Sofer writes to the Maratzchias, and there are more letters that aren't published that are in other places that he wrote to the Maratzchias, and the Chasam Sofer writes them with tremendous titles, beautiful titles, like arichastic titles, beautiful titles, saying what a Talmid Chacham and a Goyin and he is, etc. The Chasam Sofer was be'erach, give or take 50 years older than the Maratzchias. They were not contemporaries, b'chlal. The Chasam Sofer was not someone who gave out titles easily. The Chasam Sofer is much older than him. The Chasam Sofer was Gad Ladar already by the time the Maratzchias is writing to him. Maratzchias was born in 1805. The Chasam Sofer was nifter in 1840. So you know what I'm saying? It's like the Chasam Sofer was Gad Ladar already. And when Maratzchias writes him, he writes him with like these glowing titles. Now, later on, after the Chasam Sofer was nifter, one of the Talmidav of the Chasam Sofer, Reb Yosef, what's his name? The Leva Ivri. What's his name? Rakiv Yosef Schlesinger. Rakiv Yosef Schlesinger, who was an Edom by Hillel Kalamaya, who was one of the Talmid Sofer, like very close. Rakiv Yosef Schlesinger in his Leva Ivri writes as follows. I'm going to read you. It's his words. They're all his words. He says, "Tzarachani lahazir bazhara yisera, shetzrichim lashgiach al svarim anetvasim mechadash." You have to be very careful about the naya svarim that are coming out now. Ki kama v'kama minim meitzim la'ar, v'gam etzasi asher machlifim gam b'tech divrei rishonim midvarim. Some of the svarim today, they mish around, even in what the rishonim writing, they change things. Kedei sheyuchel litlas alei amachas man, so that they could be samech that someone else said it. L'shem shetzrichim lizar b'sefer kabbalah shenitfesu mishnas tach ve'elech. Just like any sefer from 1640, a Kabbalistic sefer from 1640 and on, you have to be cautious about it. From Reb Moshe, Ramad is Reb Moshe Dessau, Moses Mendelssohn. Yamash, I think, is a familiar acronym. Everyone knows what that means, Ve'elach. So from there on, he says you have to any sefer that comes out after the Haskalah started, you have to be cautious of. He says sefer b'samim rosh asher hitvisa al shem harash karkasa rabbeinu chasam sefer shema'elim le'razer rabbeinu rosh sal. Says like the sefer b'samim rosh, the sefer never saw it. The Chasam Sofer said the Rosh never saw the sefer. It's claimed to be the Rosh. Fine. Haramu Rabbi Seinu Yedei to Barav Shukamal Hashem Tzavakas Bakesh Tarim Mipiu. Mlav Al Tavakesh Tarim Mipiu. And he says V'chein Hoitzi Echad B'Deirenu. There was someone in our dar who put out something. Hagoyes Al Hashas. Says Kol Bal Nefesh LeYilmud Tarim Misham. Nobody should learn from there. Ki Ani Yedei Sheshalu LeRabbeinu Zal. They asked the Chasam Sofer, Madua Mafli Kol Kach B'Shvachah B'Tshuva. Why do you refer to the Maratzchias with such high-handed and delightful praises every time you write about him? Ana v'gila hasoid, shenoidaloi, shebechad regel hu acher, shehizki rabbeinu b'tshuva b'chesh meshbet, v'mloi kavenu yigam hu merasham b'rev terasei. Sofer told whoever this is, he doesn't say who. Sofer said, he has 1 foot out the door, and if I'm not mechaber him, basically, on the end of keep your friends close and the enemies closer. That's what the Yosef records over here in the Sefer. It says, Mi yedei mashi yebesayif, al kain asa kala espilus l'karvi. That's why he made this whole espilus in the chuvas of Mekarv. B'chein yedei ani mirabenu meir ash. He brings some Marash. The Marash didn't want to write them. Fine. This is what he says over here. Now, this is considered to be somewhat of a with an asterisk, a sketchy Haggadah to say this, because he doesn't bring who told it to him, and if you heard it from Mishver, he should say you heard it from Mishver. None of the other Talmid Chasam Sofer bring this. Chasam Sofer Lamaisa, Yavei Achai v'Yakesh Achai. Chasam Sofer wrote many letters, and they have very glowing titles, and Harav, Hagoyin, Moifes. This the Chasam Sofer wrote him very nicely. So this is it's a Haggadah to say this that has a big asterisk on the side of it. But why? What's the gebadet? Why was he upset at the Maratzchias? What was the Nakuda? So the real truth is that the Maratzchias and the Talmidei, the Chug Talmidei Chasam Sofer, had a fight about Metzitza b'peh. Now the Metzitza b'peh fight is not resolved. It's still a shiloh that comes up. I don't know. It's like Sheitels and Metzitza b'peh. I think on a cycle. Every X amount of years we talk about the same shilohs. So Metzitza b'peh was the last time? I don't know. Maybe COVID time was the last time. Before that was, I don't know, early 2000s in New York City, right? It says Alta Shaila. It started in Vienna in the early 1800s, and it's been coming up every, I don't know what the number is, 10, 20 years, since then. Now, it's a grace of Mavucha, and that's not really, we're not going to go into the Sugi Shabai, meaning there's many days, there's literally hundreds of chuvas that have been written about the topic of Metzitza b'peh, from Gedolim ranging from Russia, Lithuania, Ukraine, Poland, the Galicia, Hungary, every type of kreis dealt with it at their time and their tumult. And there's many different schools of thought how to deal with it. Some say Metzitza b'peh halacha Moshe b'Sinai. There's a medrash, there's a girsa shayla in the medrash, but the medrash says Moshe Mal Yeshua Pereya. Aaron Pereya the Yeshua Metzitz. There's a nusach in a medrash like that. So Mamash me halacha Moshe b'Sinai. This is how Moshe Rabbeinu did Mila in the Midbar. Others say that it's just purely a medical thing, just to remove the danger of their developing an infection, and therefore, if you could do it with medicine, you don't even have to do Metzitza, let alone with Pepeh versus not Pepeh. Do it with medicine, and then and it ranges from there. And then there's the Kabbalah Dikazachan that are related to it, and then other shilas. Now, what's fascinating is, and this is not so well known, the Chasam Sofer had a Talmud. His name was Rebbe Elazar Segel Horowitz. He was a Rav in Wien. Now, in Vienna, in the early 1800s, is when the Shaila really started, when the doctors really started handling the Shaila. And this is a tshuva that was never published in Shut Chasam Sofer, but it was published by Rebbe Eliezer Horowitz. Not in his tshuvas, he just makes reference to it in 4 lines, but he actually published it in the newspapers in Vienna, the Fruma newspapers. And there is, you could look it up. It's from it was published, meaning it was published. And this is he was a Talmud of Chasam Sofer, and he wrote Chasam Sofer as follows. He says, Yikrasei Higiani. I'm sorry, we should read the title. We're talking about titles. Shalom, Yikrasei Higiani says, V'yafa kasav, Hilinimtza Metzitza b'peh dafka, kiyim l'mekubalim. The idea that you need to have Metzitza b'peh dafka is only l'mekubalim. Sha'imrim l'matak hadina yidei pevis vasayim. We want to be mematik the dinah yidei pevis vasayim, ve'en lano esik b'nestaris. Say if one wants, you could compile 10, 15 chuvas where he uses this exact ein esik b'nestaris. Now, did he not? It's the same shaylas in the Yehuda. When they say ein esik b'nestaris, do they mean it? Do they just mean you shouldn't have any esik b'nestaris? It's hard to know, exactly. But as I said, the Chasam Sofer writes, ve'en esik b'nestaris. It says, heichad eikla meichers sakana kalduhu. V'ainu. Sherish mitz matzas hakol echad v'chas mitzvah. Okay, play on words. V'chulu says fine. V'oidan yomer says afilu hem mefurish b'shas meitzis b'piv. It's not. The Gemara in Shabbos says hayom lemayitz. It doesn't say piv. It says hayom lemayitz mavir le'mnase. It doesn't say meitzis b'piv. It says even hayom mefurish b'shas meitzis b'piv mikol makom. Given she'ein zeh mehachsher mila elam mishum sakana v'hamal upar v'leimatzatz kar asa mitzvasei v'atinik moter b'truma v'avavayse pesach. Even if it would say it, he says, I would say that if need be, you don't have to. You could swap it for the cash equivalent. Even if it would say Metzitza b'peh in the Mishnah, you could still swap it for the cash equivalent. make sure that you're not replacing it just for some cheap change that doesn't actually fix the problem. Make sure you're replacing it for something that fixes the problem. This is the tshuva from Sofer. Now this tshuva was never published in Chasam from Sofer, and the Talmidei Chasam Sofer, and there's many of them that wrote on the topic, are completely unanimously agreed that Metzitza b'peh is necessary and integral, and nothing else could replace it. So this tshuva that one Talmud of the Chasam Sofer in Vienna had from the Chasam Sofer, that the family never published in Chasam Sofer, and the Talmidim later on, the Ramshik L'mashal has more than one tshuva about it. I'm just choosing him because he's like a famous, I can't the primary Talmud Chasam Sofer, but Ramshik in Yerdei in Reish Ches, I think he has a tshuva, and he has another one. He does not even bring this to the existence of such a tshuva. It says Lahedya that it's asur, you have to Metzitza b'peh. Now, about 8 to 10 years after this thing came on the scene, the Maratzchias publishes his tshuva sefer, Shut Maritz, however you pronounce it, and in there in tshuva Samach he brings that Metzitza b'peh it could be changed if need be, and I'll read you, and he quotes that he's coming from none other than the Chasam Sofer. He says, one second, here he says right here. He says Be'inyin Metzitza Anuhuga Etzleinu b'poi U'b'yameinu himtziu harayfim eze samim Asher moil kamoya matzitzim. Hine kvar hoyre zakin hagoyin moifes hadar and Ramosha Sofer zatzal. Ab bezin persburg kamoya isi nidfas b'shmoi b'svarim kedoshim ki akar matzitza rak mishum sakana kamoya ksavnu. It's a very hard print to read from, but he quotes the Chasam Sofer, and then he goes on to bring some more rayas, and he says the Chasam Sofer Elaine was already makel, and you could be makel with this. Now the Talmidei Chasam Sofer, the Maramshik and others, were very troubled by this psak of the Maratzchias. It's Einzach. Maratzchias was a prominent Talmud Chacham, and these tshuvas that he's putting out a few years after the Chasam Sofer was nifter are damaging to the campaign they were in the middle of. They were the Talmidei Chasam Sofer as a group were very promoting. Now, why is the Metzitza b'peh versus not b'peh such a an issue for the fight with Haskalah or whatever? It's because Metzitza b'peh, aside from all the whole nidin, the halacha aspects and the Kabbalah aspects, etc., it's a greater form of bizer mitzvahs, meaning it's a certain sophistication. I'm going to come to the mitzvahs. Let's not be dirty. Let's not be vild and dirty. Let's do this clean and in like sterile settings, hospital settings, as opposed to the traditional way, Metzitza b'peh, which is the way the mitzvah was given. And one of the, I guess, like you call like a hallmark of a maskilik zugang to mitzvahs is let's sterilize, modernize, clean up, and not leave things in their primitive fashion. And the Talmidei Chasam Sofer, who were very busy leaving things in their primitive fashion, meaning making sure things didn't change, were very troubled by this psak of Maratzchias. Now, the truth is that this is explicitly. Oh, this is too late already. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up. But this is explicitly mentioned. The Steichemed, who's a Sfardi, not Talmidei Chasam Sofer, the Steichemed has a whole kunshus called Kunshus HaMetzitza. It's probably 200 pages long, maybe more. Depends which print you have. Kunshus HaMetzitza, he goes through all the Shitas, the Paiskim, the Rishonim, the Gemaras, the Rayas, the Hinahar, and it's a Arichas the Kesug. And then in the end of there, he brings a whole collection he brings from a Chuvas Harash, he brings from a Chidah, he brings from a Tzlach, all things that have nothing to do with Metzitza, that are all about not being too sophisticated. He brings, I'll sample you some of them. He says, he brings a Rush, the Rush in Tshuva Nun Hey. He says, Chachmas Philosophia, he tivis, v'chachamim gedolim hayu, v'hamidu kol davar al tevai, v'roiv chachmasam hemiku, shichasu, v'hotzruchu lichva b'teres Moshe. The Chacham, they were very smart, and they had a lot of important good things to say, but miroiv chachmasam, they had to go against the Torah. V'visha ein kol Torah tivis. Because the Torah is not also tevistic. Alzenemer tamim tiyam Hashem lekach ekleimer, that's one Makar, he brings a Chidah and Shem HaGedolim, when the Chidah is writing about the Ravid, he says, Nimshach l'zeh ki nehoyim in HaGedolim she'Allah alaitam lintis k'tzas m'divrei Razal b'tzad zeh. V'hoy zeh shem hoy chacham b'lamdanius v'tivius v'daitam rechava v'savru k'Razal hoy chacham levad. He says there were chachamim throughout the days who thought that Chazal were just chachamim, chachmei HaTorah. But other chachamim who knew teva and knew chachma, there's edits, there's things that need to be changed, there's updating, there's room for updating. He brings that, and he brings Tzlach and Brachas and Daftes that says the same thing talking about doctors. He collects a whole like a whole selection of these different sources in Achronim, and then he wraps it up and he says Memela Bavor Mikrum Maisim Rabbish and Taisim the Skablo Sifri Chaykri Hamachlis Verfuas Nitno Mishal Tzav Lafrial Mitzvah Mitzvah Lagamri. The government tried to intervene, which is very familiar. Kasher came but Sarfas, Bashkenaz. Sechem is writing already years later. It's already in the end of the 1800s. Could be in the beginning of the 1900s. Vashnas hayish late Rabbin Yehuvim Tziu Chachmei Reifim Kafe Metzitza Asher Yidei Al Yadam Mitzin Adam Al Derech Shemitzin Bepeh. You could use a straw or a gauze or whatever. But he says, he was quoting from a source that says there's no bittul chiv of mitzvah, and then he says, Ani that this is bizay mitzvah. This is all bizay mitzvah. Kema yisachir shbarkai, and he tells to, which is the next one I want to get to. He says, Kema yisachir shbarkai. This is a bizay mitzvah of sort. Now, so like after like his closing statement, like in a case, you lay out all the evidence, then he gets his closing statement, the Steichamed, in his closing statement, before he mamish, it's at the end, this last few pages, before he starts bringing the kolkairis from various Rabbanim, from Rabbani Yerushalayim, from wherever he collects a few kolkairis, his closing statement is don't be so sophisticated. That's the kind of don't be so sophisticated, and try to stick to the Messiah, to the way it was done. And like otherwise, he says it's a biza mitzvah. It's a biza mitzvah. Chazal gave mitzvah, and you're being worried that it's not clean, it's not this and that. It's a biza mitzvah. And he also come yisachish barkai. So what is yisachish barkai? And the truth is that the Chayei Adam really mentioned this briefly. I'll just read you quickly. The Gemara in Psachim on Daf Nun Zayin Amud Aleph tells a story. It's a shtickle tragic story. The Gemara says, Tana Rabbanan arbat tzvachis tzavcha azara. 4 like cries the azara cried out. And I think the Gemara increases, bring 6 tzvachis. Or if it's not a Gemara, it's another. Somewhere it says 6, but over here it says arbat tzvachis tzavcha azara. And the first one is Rishayna tzu mikam b'nei Eli shetimu heichal Hashem. Get out of here, b'nei Eli u'metam heichal Hashem. Then the second one is tzu mikan yisachar shbarkai shemechabed es atzmai u'mechal kol shemayim. Go out of here, Yisachar Shbarkai, who's obviously one of the Kahanim, probably Kohen Gadol, who's mechabed es atzmai u'mechal kol shemayim. Tavi karach yadei b'shiroi v'aved avoda. He would wrap his hands in silk and he would do avoda. Now, silk is a format of latex gloves from back in the day. Now, I saw some of the Achronim point out that what were the rest of the Kahanim thinking? He says, some of the rest of the Kahanim thought, before the Azara said, Tzu, Yisachar Barkai, but what was the rest of the Kahanim? Some of the rest of the Kahanim were thinking it's very bakapadik. It's a Sheina Maisa. Put on fancy silk, hands. It'd be machabed. It's a, what do you say? Oh, 1 second. So it's an upgrade, they were thinking. Till the Heichel shad out and it said, Sumikan, thing. Now, why should Mechalak Beit Shemayim? So now Rashi brings something interesting. Rashi says, Karach Yad B'Shiroi. Rashi says, Aleph, the Chatzitza Peselas B'Kachim. Chatzitza is Pesel B'Kachim. The Be'inon, V'lakach HaKayin Shikach Ba'atzmai. V'oid, the Bezayinu. V'oid, it's a Bizay Mitzvahs. As I said, Rashi. Now, the Achronim, I think the Tzlach points out, the diak was that it says 2 things. It says Shemechabed es atzmai u'mechalal kloit shemayim. Kilo, a double taina. Mechabed es atzmai, that's the bizay mitzvahs. You focus on, you don't want to get dirty, you want to be genteel, clean, you want it to be very proper. And mevaza sakachim is because it's a din in kachim, you're making a chatzitza. Now the Gemara Gadim Sachim tells us a very tragic story, the end of Yisachar Barkai. It says, my salka baby Yisachar Ish Barkai, what ended up happening to him? It says, Amri Malko Malchus Aviyasvi, the king and the queen were having a machlekes. Malka Amr Gdiya Yoy, Malchus Amr Imri Yoy. They were having a menu fight. What's the best meat to have? Amru, they said, Man Muchach, who's the biggest meat expert that we know? Kohen Gadol, the Kamasa Kabanos Kol Yema. There's no one who deals with more meat on a daily basis. The biggest butcher in all of Israel is the Kohen Gadol. Let's go talk to him. So Asiyu, he got involved, and of course, when you get involved in a fight between 2 powerful people, you're the only one who loses, and Yisachar Barkai ends up losing his arm. He motions with his arm, and they end up cutting off his arm as an einish. Now, and Chazal saw that as a direct, like Mida connected Mida to the Bizay mitzvahs. Yisachar Shbarkai was Mavaz the mitzvahs, he's Mavaz the because he wore gloves, and thing. Now, I really want to end, so I'm just going to wrap up with this. I'll leave you with Maramakim, the Chalkas Yaakov of Braish, in Yeridea and Siman Kuf Mem Ches. He has a tshuva over there about wearing gloves when giving a bris. Could a male wear gloves? And first he handles the fact that you can't do priya with gloves, because priya requires a nail, and if you're doing a nail, what's fadinst if you have latex gloves and you're poking right through it? So Elamai, you're telling me that a guy who wears gloves automatically is using some sort of instrument for priya. So that's a problem. So forget about the gloves. The instrument for priya is a problem. Fine, okay, that's his shmuz. Then he ends up going in the whole second half of the tshuva. He goes to the bizay mitzvah aspect of it, and to the kama shaktu chachmei Yisrael by the Metzitza fights to keep the mitzvah of milah, how the mitzvah of milah should be. He brings Yisachar Shbarkai, meaning he closes this whole loop. He brings like the kama shaktu by like the Steichamed saying, like the Talmidei Chasam Sofer saying, how in order to keep the mitzvah of milah, in the way it was, and to change it as a bizay mitzvah, he closes that to gloves, and he ends up saying that one should not use gloves for milah. Now, there are probably, I don't know, dozens of more shilas that apply with gloves and mitzvahs, ranging from a Sofer using gloves while he writes in the winter, to a Sofer writing a get. Is he allowed to wear gloves while he writes a get? Could you wear gloves while you're davening? There's many shilas relating to gloves. We're not going to have the time or patience to go through all of them. It's just interessant. I saw that there's a few different people asked Chaim Kanievsky about using gloves when one's writing a get. Really, the need is like, is there a din of Zekei Levanveo on the ksav of a get? Like, should a get be beautiful, or is a get just like it's an instrument of divorce? It's not. And Chaim gave different answers to Kedarka B'Kodesh. There's different answers to different people, and I saw all my racha, stimming it all. It's entertaining and interesting, but we'll leave it as a footnote. Anyhow, Ashikayach K'Shabbos.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.